Hey, and welcome to the Weed Out, where we weed out the nonsense and talk about the bullshit happening in our backyards. I'm Spencer Fox Peterson, as always, with my partner.
Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Booty.
This week we're having Danielle and Jake of Decarcerate Western Mass. They're an abolitionist activist group. They focus on bail and helping out our comrades that are tied up in the mass industrial complex. I'm not going to get into too much. We're gonna let them talk for themselves because here at the Weed Out, we like to platform people doing good work and give them a chance to connect with a wider audience. So again, everybody, thank you for tuning in. And as always, you can go to our website, www.theweedout.com, and anything we mention in this, pertinent links, um, resources, you can get there. So if we miss it or you misunderstand it or don't hear it clearly, it's going to be posted on our website and our Substack. So thank you. As always, please check our sources. We try to be as transparent as possible with our time, considering how much time it goes into it, but we pride ourselves on that. And again, I thank everybody for tuning in. And Joanna, I would just like to say, hey, how you doing? How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm glad it's spring. I'll
I totally agree. It's a beautiful day, and I'm excited to get to talk about prison abolition. So that's always a plus.
yeah, spring gardens. It's the weed out. Like we're kind of nerds like that. So it's always good to mention the good stuff and the little joy and the smell of the grass growing, the cow manure.
Absolutely.
As pungent and unpleasant it does remind you of rebirth. So I just want to, before I take too much time talking, I just want to say thank you again for Danielle and Jake for joining us. And Joanna, please take the show away.
Sure thing. Yes, Jake and Danielle, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to throw out some questions, and I would love it for the audience. Like I do know what decarcerate is, but I would love it for the audience if, in case they don't, if you would, whoever would like to talk about like what is decarcerate, and then I would like to know who both of you are, and then what your roles are within that group.
Yeah, so I don't mind kicking us off. This is Danielle. Thank you so much for having us here today. So Decarcerate Western Mass Bailout Project, which is kind of the current iteration of the group, came out of the original Decarcerate Western Mass, which was a response to COVID and the state's lack of response behind the wall. And so, as we know, in Hampden County Jail, people were not given what they needed in order to be safe behind the wall during a pandemic. And so a lot of activists, organizers, and lawyers and community members on the outside, came together under the banner of Decarcerate Western Mass, and did a range of things to try and get folks out. So created parole packets for folks who were serving sentences, tried to get people out who were being held pretrial, put pressure on the sheriff, right? So like a whole range of tactics. So, but for us, we kind of were trying to figure out what's a real tangible way that we could actually like decarcerate, right? Like get people out of jail. And so we decided to do an all volunteer community bail fund. The Massachusetts Bail Fund exists in Massachusetts, but they weren't posting in Western Mass at all at the time. And so we came together really to kind of fill that need. First posting in Hampden County, because that's the second biggest jail in Massachusetts. But now we post in Hampshire and Franklin County. So we're focused on getting folks who are held pretrial, which means they've been charged but not convicted. They're still legally innocent. And so we try and free them so they can go back home to their lives. Jake, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I can introduce myself. So I'm Jake. I'm a volunteer with Decarcerate Western Mass Bailout Project. I've been involved for about 2 years, and I help out with a lot of different things with the group. Sort of one of those people who just takes on whatever's needed at the moment. So sometimes that's trying to work on collecting bails that are ready to be picked up from the courthouses, which is a really messy and confusing process. Sometimes that's training volunteers who want to post bail on how to do that. Sometimes it's helping out with fundraising. I also helped organize an event in the fall to pack some re-entry kits. So those are backpacks that have some basic supplies, notes, cash, hygiene, health stuff, COVID stuff for people who are bailing out, just to give them something to hold on to once they get out of jail. So lots of different roles, and that's kind of the nature of our organization, right? We're all volunteers, so we're all kind of jumping in wherever is needed based on needs that are arising. Um, and in addition to posting bail, so I mentioned our reentry kits. That's one of our ongoing activities right now, is focusing on how we can support people when they're getting out of jail, starting off with reentry kits. So starting off small, hopefully can expand our reentry services in the future. And then we're also looking into coalition building right now. So trying to make connections with other organizations in the area towards the goal of abolishing prisons in Western Mass, towards, and maybe more specifically towards ending pretrial detention in the state of Massachusetts. So those are some things that are on our radar right now.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I'm so sorry. I totally forgot to say what I actually do for the group. So real quick, I'm basically, I guess I'm kind of like the admin. I do all the not fun stuff like taxes and record keeping and, anything that's not sexy, it's like mine. And I've been with the group since the bail fund started. Well, I was with Decarcerate and then with the bail group since it started in January 2021.
Fantastic. All of the non-sexy work is so important. So thank you. And thank you, Jake, as well, and to the whole group. I remember on social media in March of 2020, I started seeing a lot about the crisis regarding COVID in Hampden County. And that's how I heard about all of you in the first place. And I have been following along ever since, because it's just such great work that is so necessary. And I wonder, how did you both get into this? So whoever wants to answer first can do that. But how did you how did this pique your interest?
Yeah, I can start. So this is Jake again, and my entry point into abolition work was, I had some sort of general consciousness raising throughout my college education, college years, and then in my early 20s, when I was living in Providence, Rhode Island, I had a housemate who had been in prison for 17 years, and we became really close friends and housemates and lived together for a while, and sort of had that personal connection to somebody who had that lived experience. And that was a huge component of bringing me into this work, right? So having that personal connection, knowing somebody who had been directly impacted and wanting to change the system for other people who had been through similar situations. And then during the 2020 uprisings, I started doing some more political education for myself and some friends, and we were doing a reading group. And then after I had spent a bunch of time doing a lot of reading, I was like, okay, it's time to put this into action. So I just found ways to get involved in the place where I was currently living. So that was sort of my journey. Um, yeah, just having a lot of free time, as a lot of us did during the earlier days of the pandemic, and wanting to, sort of move outside myself and, get involved in the work that was already happening in the area.
Yeah, I would say so. That was fun for me to hear because I actually haven't heard that. So, but yeah, my journey was a little different in that I came to kind of abolitionist work through immigrant justice kind of organizing, and had been volunteering for the Pioneer Valley Worker Center back in 2018 or whatever. And then also, like Jake, had time during COVID because I had lost my job, and then was trying to kind of was filling the space with projects that felt kind of really tangible and that were local. Like I felt like there was a lot kind of going on that was national level, but Decarcerate was something that I could do in my backyard. And so started attending meetings and kind of went from there. And so this is one of many projects that I do that I guess fall under the kind of umbrella of abolition. But it's definitely one of the most kind of dear to me, since I've helped get it started, and we have a really great team. So yeah.
That's awesome to hear both stories. And I think, to me, like what stands out from each story, I guess, would be, Jake, like when you said that you had like that personal connection that really made that important for you. And I think that happens for a lot of us that may become prison abolitionists. So I would hope that it doesn't take that and that we can have others. It doesn't always take that. But I know that it is once you really talk to someone, or if you became a pen pal, which I know, I don't know if that's an option with Decarcerate, but I know there are other groups in Massachusetts and in Western Mass where that's like a nice option for people listening. If you haven't had experience or spoke to someone who has been incarcerated, there are options so that you can educate yourself and understand what's going on beyond what you hear and just maybe the news or mass media. So I just want to let the audience know that. And I think, Danielle, you made a great point too, that like it can feel sort of out of control if we focus on the like federal level sometimes and like what's happening, like especially in 2020. Like it was such it was an overwhelming feeling just in general, like trying to grasp at like what can I do. And you're right, like if you could find groups locally that were working on things that could make changes within your community, I think it gave you a sense of a more community, and then be like it, like you said, you could see some change like happening in your backyard. So those are some wonderful things to just, I like to highlight those. I would like to highlight those for the audience. And I wonder
Yeah,
if
definitely. Can I chime in again?
of course.
Yeah, that just sparked something for me, which is something I've been thinking about a lot. Is I heard somebody say recently that movements of liberation require practices of freedom, and something that means to me personally is that um, that sort of speaks to this divide that we can sometimes feel, that there's this big system level stuff that's happening out there, really far away from us and really out of reach, and it's this big level macro thing, and then we have our own individual lives, right? And there can be sort of a disconnect between those two, but when you really get down to it, there is no divide between those things, and you have to find a way to personalize things and to make our work on the system the same as our work in our personal lives, right? It's the same work, and it all starts with the things that we're doing in our own backyards with the people that we know. And I think that there are a lot of different ways to personalize the work, whether that's through a relationship or letter writing or getting connected to your community. But at the end of the day, it's like you can't just work on this big systems out there without also doing the work here in your own personal life.
Yeah, and just to build off what you're just saying, one thing we say a lot on the show, it's not a big conspiracy. It's a bunch of aligned interests, and the wealthy, and the elite, and it's not this big conspiracy. It's leverage with money and power, and that it's every relationship, and everybody's compromised, and law enforcement, because if somebody knows about something they shouldn't know about, then they're compromised and they have to pay it off in some way. And it's not always just money exchanging hands. It's not these big sexy things, as you say. So like all of this is unsexy. It's just the way power works. So it's important to remember that. And we make difference in our backyard. So what if Joe Biden says, I'm demanding we hire 100,000 more cops and spend more money and build Cop City in Atlanta, which needs to not happen. The Democrats should not be holding their convention there, not be allowed to. They should be made really uncomfortable if they do, because Cop City is gross. And we can also just ignore that motherfucker. We don't have to take his money, but we got to change hearts and minds on the ground and explain, hey, why does your local police need a tank? Why do they need drones? Why do they need helicopters? And think about it. They're overseeing us. This is what we've been trying to tell you. So we just need to change hearts and minds locally and point out the corruption where we can, and hopefully highlight direct action that works and say, look, this is how a community can take care of mutual aid, direct action, etc. So thank you very much for both digging in, and taking bad times and trying to lean into it. And it is true, when you care about something, it makes the work a little bit less grinding. So it's still bleak, but there is joy there. So it's important to remember that. So thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think, to kind of what both you and Jake were just saying, is that part of the part of what can feel so daunting about abolition is that we're talking about, creating a really different society in terms of how we approach everything, right? And the thing I appreciate about abolitionists is that they're the ones who've been thinking about this for a long time, especially like Black feminist abolitionists, is that they're like, we're actually not going to create a society that doesn't have violence, guys. Like, there's going to be violence, but how we respond to it's going to be radically different. And the kind of difference is they're hyper focused on community responses and building up from there rather than the other way around, right? Because right now the state dictates all the kinds of responses we have. They also dictate like who gets criminalized, who doesn't, right? And so part of abolition is flipping that on its head. And so I think if we start to think about it more at a local level, we can see that like the carceral system is really like involved in all kinds of things that we do every day. Like, it's in our schools, right? It's in our healthcare systems. Like, if people are pregnant who are low income and they go to the hospital, they can be drug tested, right? And so, there's lots of ways that criminalization in the carceral system shows up in our everyday institutions. And I think it becomes easier to imagine, working toward abolition when we focus on those specific things rather than being like, we're going to close prisons tomorrow. Like, we're not. But we need to have a plan for like, getting cops out of everything we do, right? And actually having responses in our communities that are going to meet people's needs.
Absolutely. And as we approach budget season, I just want to let the audience know this is the perfect time to be visiting like your town meetings if you can. A lot of them still have Zoom access. You do have those local votes. They really do matter. As someone who lost my local town meeting by 1 vote, it really does matter. Like, and that's okay that I didn't make it, but like, that's why we should be out there voting, I think. And letting people know during budget season, it's not even about voting. It's about making your voice heard to potentially the select board or the council in your town and letting them know, like, you do not want your taxes allocated towards violent systems that really just oppress and harm others. And then there are a number of wonderful people working in Western Mass doing these things like Decarcerate and others. And I just want to remind the audience too that the bail fund is such an important thing, because otherwise people are held, as Danielle said, pre-trial before they've been found guilty. They're still innocent. And it's all based on financial like whether or not you can afford to get out or not. So that's again attacking the least the least in our communities, with the people with the least resources, that need the most help are the ones most impacted by these systems too, which is really something I think people who may not know or want to get into this prison abolitionist headspace and you're wondering about things, and I would say start there.
There's no silver bullet, so it's all about harm reduction, right? We can't just like, oh yeah, we're going to close prisons and all the problems go away. I mean, or we're not going to be able to abolish prisons, so why bother? Well, you got to do harm reduction. You got to help people that are incarcerated pretty much in most scenarios. I mean, at least most of it comes down to, do they have the money to fight or not? And that in itself is a gate, and so there's no silver bullet. So whether it's helping out with a bail fund or lobbying for bail reform or arguing against pretrial detention, getting politicians on the record, and trying to change the hearts and minds of your neighbors as best you can with whatever tool you have. Not everybody has a different way of doing it. So anything you can do, learning about it is definitely the first step. Jake mentioned earlier he spent a long time reading about it, and so have Joanna and I, and none of our ideas are new to us. I mean, we didn't invent them, we're extrapolating on great thinkers that came before us, and you don't have to go all the way back to Karl Marx. You can go to the 70s with I.W. Wells and I don't know, James Baldwin. I don't know, just, and usually they have multiple intersectionalities. So they see it from like, oh, even if I was a straight Black man, I'd be fucked. So they get it that it's not about carceral. And I'm just fortunate that I had enough people bash me in the head with the idea that you got a privilege, bro. So, and reading had a lot to do with it. And so yeah, I don't know. I kind of rambling there, but there's no silver bullet, I guess, is what I was getting at. I don't know if anybody else agrees or disagrees, or if
No,
they
I agree completely. And I'd like to plug Derica Purnell becoming an abolitionist. If anyone was thinking like, oh, what should I read? That's extremely current. And it draws from the author's experiences as a lawyer, writer, and organizer. And they were initially skeptical about police and like prison abolition. So it gives you a really nice introduction, I think, to the movement. And it's super current. So there's that too. And just to kind of turn back to decarcerate, I'm wondering, say I'm someone in Western Mass and I hear this, or I see you on Instagram. How can I find out more if I did want to get involved?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing first I would like say, check out our website at decarceratewesternmass.org because that will give some kind of overview, and it also has a running calendar of events. We recently just got a website update that we're really excited about. And then, our Instagram at decarwmass is also another place to kind of check out what like upcoming events there are. But really, like we hold meetings every other Monday, that if someone wanted to get involved, they could just email us, for that link and start attending meetings. Our organization is a little different, I think, than some others in that there's no like set body of people who have decision-making power, over everything. Like it's kind of because it's horizontal and community led that like whoever's involved in the meetings and stuff can make decisions. So yeah, if folks want to get involved, they can. That's certainly one way to do it. And also we're going to be attending a lot of different kinds of events this month in particular. So for example, we'll be at the People's Science Fair at UMass on April 28th from 12 to 4 doing some tabling. And yeah, we're going to try and be more present at different events, as Jake said, because coalition building is really one of our priorities for the rest of the year.
I'll also add that in terms of getting involved, if people are out there and they're wanting to get involved with something, or maybe they have an idea of a really small thing that they would want to do to support this kind of pretrial detention decarceration work, definitely there's space to bring that to us, and then we can help make that happen, right? So we really welcome people who have an idea and want to make it happen, or people who are working with another community group and want to join forces to do something together. That's the kind of thing that I think we're stressed, right? Is people who like have a skill or something that they want to bring to us. If people don't have an idea though, they're still welcome to join us and get plugged into the work they're already doing, right? So if people want to help out with social media, that's a way that we can always use help. People want to post bail, we can always use more bail posting volunteers. If somebody wants to help us work on collecting bails that are ready to be picked up, that involves a lot of calling the courts and a lot of navigating bureaucracy, right? So it's like we said earlier, it's not sexy work, a lot of this. So I would say that getting involved with us is not for the person who wants to, do some volunteer work that's going to make them feel good about themselves, because this is not that kind of work. It's just it's a lot of grunt work. It's really, you're dealing with a lot of bureaucracy, you're interfacing with a lot of jail officials and cops and people who work at the courts. So that's a big piece of this, but there's also a big community building aspect to it as well as political education. So people are more on the reading side of things, or if they want to do some more consciousness raising, then that's something that we care a lot about, and we could always use more manpower around, or human power around uh, organizing events or participating in reading groups or different things like that.
All wonderful things that are super necessary. And I guess I would say to the audience too, like if any of this feels like too much, but you can only follow along and again attend some of your local town meetings and let your council know how you feel about how they're allocating funds. Or if you see a call to action, you could send an email to the Hampden County jails and let them know, like, I disagree and I saw this on Decarcerate and please stop doing this or that, whatever the issue is, depending on the time that you may look. And then if you have the financial ability, donate to the bail fund. That may not be as time consuming or as hard for some people that may not be able to get as involved as they would like to. So I just want to put that out there. And you've mentioned my final question was going to be around like what calls to action do you have currently that you'd want people to really focus on? And I heard that there's something coming up. I heard you say, Danielle, that at UMass you're going to have an event, but are there anything besides that or like dates that we'd want to just let people know, like these are coming up like soon and you should know about these and maybe come out and join us?
Yeah, I mean, so the People Science Fair, I think is, hopefully I just said it right. Yeah, the People Science Fair at UMass is April 28th, and there's going to be a lot of different organizations there. So it's really, I think, a good place to figure out what's going on in the Valley, just in general, and to say hi to us. But I would say there's, different kinds of calls to action. Like, for us, posting bail is a like weekly thing that's just going to probably continue, unfortunately, forever until we can end pretrial detention and cash bail. So, that there's not like a call to action around that. But that being said, we are kind of part of an ecosystem in the state of Massachusetts that involves organizations that are doing really good work. And there's been a lot of bills introduced in this legislative session that needs some support. And so, if you care, for example, about jails and folks who are incarcerated in jails and their family members, like call your local representatives and make them support no-cost calls or the prison moratorium legislation that, Baker vetoed. There's a lot of different, I think, like ways that folks can get involved around advocating for legislation. So that's a different kind of call to action that's not maybe specific to our group, but I think would benefit, the overall kind of reform and abolition movement in Massachusetts. Jake, did you have anything?
No, I think you did a good job of covering what's current for us right now. I'm not sure when this episode will air, but our next meeting is on Monday, the 17th, and then of April, and then it'll be bi-weekly after that. And that happens on Monday nights at 7 p.m. on Zoom.
Awesome. So we would want to email the group to get that link. Fantastic. And we will post all of the things we've talked about in terms of the legislature and who you can contact, what bills we've talked about. I will post some samples on our website, just like of how you may want to be able to access your town meeting if you don't want to go in person, if that's still available. We have previous episodes where we've talked about this and how to get involved in like budget season and also how to pull records requests and different things like that. So that's another way to sometimes get information that you may need. But thank you, Danielle and Jake and Decarcerate Western Mass for doing this great work. Like Danielle said at the beginning, as abolitionists, sometimes you really, you would really hope for is that all of these systems could just be immediately changed because like Jake said too, once you kind of get to know what's going on, it is kind of really, I'm sure, very hard and upsetting work sometimes because of what you're seeing. And it's also very joyful because you can also get people out of those situations. So very complex work with a lot, like just mentioning like from the court clerk probably all the way to the sheriff and the judge and all those in between. And then the impacts that the system not only has on an individual, but the family. I think that's really important to let the audience know, like it impacts everyone. So this work is such an important component in what I would say is a large network of people working in Western Mass. So I would hope everyone would get out to the UMass People Science Fair. Just connect to those people. You may have a different interest than, specifically the Decarcerate group, but there might be someone else. And if our values align enough, we actually all do agree on things, and we can work together to get to and reimagine a better world. And it will be slow, and it's just making dents, but that's why we're all here, I think. So thank you so much, Danielle and Jake, for coming on today. And again, to the entire group for all of the great work that you do. I don't know if Spence would like to add anything.
Just can you guys just shout out your social media? Like, just give us give the audience where you guys are most active on, etc. And again, we're going to post all the stuff on our website and on our Substack too. So if it's the links will be there. So please just tell us where are you most active, I guess is probably the.
Yeah, I would say we're most active on Instagram for sure, which is, at Decarcerate Mass. And before I forget, I would also say it's not our group specifically, but if you want to check out Massive Bookshop on social media, that would also be super great because you don't have to get your books from Amazon. You can get them from Massive Bookshop, and they donate proceeds to the bail fund, and also have extensive kind of relationships with abolitionist organizations too, and are doing a similar thing for those organizations as well. So also check them out. Jake, did you want to? I think Instagram is probably what I would say, but Jake will know better.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. And then and we also operate, come to our meetings, get on our email list, get in our Signal group chats. That's where a lot of the action is happening in terms of we need volunteers for posting bail today or that kind of thing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We will share all of this information. I am so excited to see what you're going to be doing in the future, because I personally find it so exciting that there are groups of us that really want to put dents in these systems. So every time Spencer and I do an episode where we get to meet more people from the fantastic groups that are working together in Western Mass, it's so uplifting. You just meet more and more people that have the same values as you, and then you can work together, like both Jake and Danielle and Spencer have said, to kind of it really feels like you're doing something, and you are, because you're doing something for your actual neighbors in your community, and you can change your community. And please remember, you can reimagine society and the world. And I think that's something that people in power and who have money, they don't want you to remember and think that way, but it is true, and you can do it. And I think everyone here would want you to feel not alone. So reach out to either us or Decarcerate or whoever you can if you want to be involved and you have values. And if you don't, I don't know why you've listened this long, but I'm glad you're here. Again, thank you, Danielle and Jake, so much, and Decarcerate Western Mass for all that you do. And Spence, you may want to take us out, but I think Danielle has something to say.
No, I was just going to say thank you so much for having us.
Well, now that the business is over, do you guys want to stick around for our final segment, Ghoulery and Tomfoolery?
Yeah, I can hear this. I'm curious.
Yeah, sure. I'm so curious.
It's basically it's always news that hits close to home, because we got to weed our garden here. And my favorite police department is in the news, and it's Mass Live reporting, so it's still cop friendly, but this is the headline, and it was reported on March 31st, 2023. Holyoke Police Department may replace aging handguns with new Glock 9mm weapons. Okay, so they're just going to burn some more money, right? But the kicker is, if you Google the same, you just Google Holyoke Police gun, the second hit is from the Shoestring, and it says records: Holyoke cop pointed gun at fellow officer's car. And we've talked about this story before in the past, but the point is, they can't manage the ones they have, and they're going to get new ones. And they're proven to be unsafe with them. And the joke, me and Joanna talked in a previous episode, if I pointed a gun at somebody and I hadn't say it was all good, had all the paperwork, had no issues, they would probably temporarily take my gun and suspend my LTC just for the accusation. and they get to keep their job. So that's the ghoulery and tomfoolery. I mean, Holyoke, Chief Pratt has referred to the ARPA funds as a kid at Christmas list getting toys, referring to guns, stun guns, etc. So I want to hear everybody's take, and I guess we'll do the guests first, then Joanna. So Danielle, what is your take?
Well, I will say I as part of a work thing a couple of years back, we went on a field trip to the Holyoke Police Department, which was really fascinating, because it is, yeah, like they're fully committed to their work, we'll put it that way, including having like, one of those dummies to like kind of practice whatever maneuver. I don't even know what they would practice with it, but you get what I'm saying. And they have a surveillance room with all these different cameras everywhere of Holyoke, and you're just like, whoa, like and then, you see the holding cells that they have. I don't know if most people know that like police stations have their own holding cells, and then the jails have holding cells. Anyway, but yeah, it totally doesn't surprise me that if they can find a way to spend money, that they're gonna. And I absolutely agree that certainly, I don't think cops they don't need guns, period. As we know, like there were how many police killings in 2022? So yeah, it's ridiculous.
Whoa. Listen, the cop, like 260 cops died of COVID last year. All right. And it's a dangerous job. Anyways, they're pointing guns at each other, and the money thing is ridiculous. Yeah, so that's a good take. Jake, do you have any thoughts?
Well, it's not surprising to me that they're pointing their guns at each other. Boys gotta show off their equipment to each other sometimes. And in terms of getting the new guns, I mean, I'm wondering who is the CEO of that gun company, and how are they related to the Holyoke Police Department, right? Whose brother is whose in-law, right? There's got to be some kind of payoff happening there. So
Yeah,
that's my conspiracy theory take on this.
whose sales rep is like buddies with so and so, and anyways, yeah. So the fun thing. Oh, here's a fun thing. So you can also Google further back on Holyoke Police. They lose guns quite regularly. Literally, like leave them in public bathrooms, get them stolen, somebody uses it as compromat to get a friend out of jail because they knew where one of the stolen rifles was that was stolen from a cop's house. Like they just can't control their own weapons. And Joanna and I got the bright idea to ask for records. Like, hey, what's your weapons inventory? Do you guys have one? Like, and they fought us tooth and nail. Even though the Secretary of State says they have to, they won't. They refuse. Joanna and I have just kind of put that on the back burner. But now they want new guns. It's like, bro, you're losing guns everywhere. So I don't know. Joanna's probably got a hot take on this, so I want to hear what she has to say.
Well, everyone else's take is perfect. Because it's just like at any job that we have all had, where you're exchanging, labor for money, which the cops think that they're doing. I have different opinions, but if you're at work, usually if you're not using the equipment or the things that you, like before the episode, we were talking about printers. If I smashed the printer at work, I'd probably get fired. So I just find it absurd that you can misuse your gun. Like, I agree with Danielle. Like, why do they even have them at all? But to be able to misuse and have the issues that Holyoke has, I would not. If I were mayor, I've said this before, like Josh Garcia, please, if you're ever listening, don't give them the money for this. And it's absurd. Give it to your community for things that will help it. And I guess that's my hot take. And I didn't know that about the inside of the Holyoke Police Department, but it tracks. And thank you for sharing about that, Danielle.
Oh yeah, and I told you, like there's also a whole room where they have to store all the stuff that they seize, like in civil, like the assets that they seize when something happens. So there's like this weird room full of like bicycles and bats and this and that, and you're just like, what is all this, And so I don't know. I mean, it's who knows how much of that stuff gets lost too, I guess.
last year they ripped a bunch of marijuana, like fully matured marijuana plants from somebody's backyard and confiscated it because it was like they broke some ordinance. I don't know if it was like they could see it from the street or somebody complained about the smell, even though that I don't know what the ordinance, I don't know what it was, but it was just like basically they just jacked this dude's weed. It was kind of like he was probably gonna cut it down. Anyways, yeah, so that's what they do. And then is that in that room? We don't know. It doesn't matter. Like I mean it does matter. Sorry. It's like it's just so funny that the things they flex sometimes you're like, wait a second, what? And there's also been other rumors that I won't proliferate here that are actually more egregious about like their gun range and stuff. I I can't corroborate it, but where there's smoke there's fire, so I'm not shocked that that's what the firsthand account of their department was like. So yeah, Joanna, do you have anything else to say before we wrap it up?
I'm just, again, to remind the audience, please check out Decarcerate Western Mass. If all you can do is reach out to the people in charge of making decisions in the state or in your town to tell them how you feel about how they spend the tax dollars. In Massachusetts, that would be fantastic. If you can donate to the bail fund, please do. Please let people go home and be with their families until their day in court rather than sit and rot in a horrible, torturous jail. And thank you again to Danielle, Jake, and anyone involved in any abolitionist movement or reform movement in Western Mass. Thank you for being here, and thank you for just continuing on and making little dents where you can, because that's all we can do, I think.
Do you have anything else you guys want to say before we log it off?
Thanks for having us on the show.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Thanks for this fun conversation. And we look forward to listening to who you have on the future shows. So yeah.
Yeah, and I hope you're open to coming back. Hope this was fun. And
Yeah, absolutely.
want to be able to, when we build these networks, we want to continue them. So when there's action coming up or a call to action or whatever, the possibilities are endless. We want to build the network, so feel free to always reach out to us. We'll gladly share stuff on social media, of course, and you're welcome to come back on anytime you want. So just always feel free that you can reach out to us, and everybody should please go follow them. Thank you so much for being on, and let's continue the good work.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Take care,
Thanks.
everybody.